So let's jump right into today's episode. And much like Cardio Miracle disrupted the heart health supplement game, we're going to be talking about how do you, as a brand new brand or a brand trying to enter into a brand new marketplace, how do you disrupt the competition and actually generate attention, but also generate sales, of course. And then along the way, how do you make sure that you're building a winning culture? We're going to discuss all that and more. Joining me here on the show today is Ryan Chute. Ryan, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
Fantastic. How are you?
Can't complain, man. We're right here next to Christmas, so it's my favorite time of year. I'm gonna be very honest. I don't know what it is about the Christmas season. I know there's a lot of cliches. People think like, oh, you're getting gifts and stuff like that, but it's the vibe of Christmas. I really just love the time of year. The focus on friends and family and giving and just. Yeah, the stuff that actually matters. But, what does Buzz say in Home Alone? Enough of this mushy show of bull emotion. We'll go ahead. Ryan, do me a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience. Who is Ryan Chute, and why do I see that you might be the Wizard of Ads?
Well, I'm a partner at the Wizard of Ads, and Wizards of Ads is something that I joined about 8 years ago now. Had been studying under Roy Williams, who is the actual wizard, since 2015, and read his books back in the early 2000s. It was a real game changer for me in 2015. I had come from a transactional lifestyle. It's very transactional in how I look at life. Very much how I sold. I was a salesperson selling automotive at that given time, and I had done really, really well for myself. But when I met him, I realized that there was this whole other universe that was available to me that was infinitely easier than the grind of selling in the kind of transactional discounting, coupons, offers, sale all the time kind of way. And it was incredibly eye-opening to me, and it put me on a path that brought me to where I am today.
Well, let's dig in a little bit more about the difference in going away from some of the transactional sales, right? Because I work in the space where it's more of a B2B space, and it's much more of a longer sales process. I've seen I've seen fast deals, which a fast deal would be like, somebody calls and they're looking for a brand new unified communications phone system. We could get that turned around pretty quick. I would say in general, the average actual time frame that we would engage with a customer to actually close one business, 4 to 6 weeks. But you go to in some of these larger contact center deals that I've worked, and I mean, we're talking hundreds of agents, and you're talking all these different integrations you have to have put together. You're talking workforce management, you're talking quality assurance, you're talking quality management, you're talking, all these different divisions, the reporting, the analytics. These deals are huge, and I've seen them take literally 1 to 2 years in some instances. Now, mind you, when they do officially go closed one, some of these deals are so big, they are literally in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in monthly recurring revenue, right? So from a commission standpoint, the sales guy, they're giving 2 thumbs up with a great big smile on their face. And who can blame them, right? But those are very long sales processes. And yet, I think your average person, Ryan, they think of sales very much back to the example you outlined. And that is this just transactional kind of sale where, I go to Sears. I don't know why I picked Sears. Does Sears even exist anymore? I go to Harbor Freight. I go to Ace True Hardware. I don't know why I picked Sears. I go somewhere to buy something, right? I'm handing money to somebody there at the cash register, and I'm getting a physical product in return. And then I walk away. I go home. I have my product. They have my money. Happy transaction on either side of the aisle, right? That's what I think most people have in the mind of sales. And there's unfortunately some just distaste in that, because to your point, I think folks as buyers, they've experienced what it's like when you're going through, pardon my language, but a shitty sales process. You can feel like, okay, where's the guy going to pull out the coupon now? What's he going to try to do to get me to buy today? We've all gone to the car dealership and the guy comes back. He's like, hey, just talk to finance. You're not going to believe this. And whenever they say you're not going to believe this, it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure. Right. And as soon as they say that, and I'm like, what? They're like, we're going to get you a special discount today, right? We're going to knock $500 off right now for the down payment. If you sign today, you can drive it off the lot, right? And we feel that, and inherently we just feel icky. There is something, to your point, transactional. There is something like you're just kind of like, and granted, it's a transactional sale, but just the idea of like, that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to you're not selling value. You're just lowering your price. It just feels weird and slimy and just not good, right? As a buyer as well. So I say all that. What's one of the things as you're kind of going through and you're working with companies, they don't want to be seen as the transactional sale. So how are you able to take some areas where it's a traditionally very transactional type of motion and make it not feel like a transactional sale?
Well, Brian, I've come to learn that everybody is transactional in the way that they purchase until you give them a reason to be relational. Right? Until there's a reason for you to be relational, there's absolutely no reason why the only measuring stick shouldn't be price. Ultimately, that's where the terms and conditions, the offer, everything come into play, and you have to work really hard to get that deal. This is the epitome of the car industry, like you said, right? Which is something that most people would know and recognize and have gone through, whether it be new or used. Well, we don't have to do that. We could instead replace that with relational style selling, where people will pay you a higher price for the exact same product because you made them feel right about it. Even when you were describing what you do and the very complex sales solution that you're coming up with, the more complex the solution, of course, often the longer it takes, and the more attachment there is to getting it right. But it always comes back down to one thing: how you made them feel. And in this case, what you needed to do and figure out and solve was how to remove the uncertainty. Are they going to have the reports they need? Are they going to have enough stations to do the thing that needs to be done? Are they going to have enough data bandwidth to be able to process the volume of calls that are coming in and going out at any given time? Are they ticking all of the boxes? And that certainty is what has them feel whether or not they've made the right decision or not, even when you're not the cheapest solution, because the cheap solution often removes some of that solution. Well, it also removes the very intelligent people who have to go about solving that problem, because the really intelligent people are solving problems and getting paid well. And that's part of the process is the cost of training and understanding and being able to navigate this in the right way. These are all oriented to feelings, which ties right into exactly how we orient our culture around the operations of our business. And this ties right back to brand. Because at the end of the day, the brand is what makes you feel. And in the absence of a brand, you have a business. And in your business, you can be transactional or you can be relational. But the brands that people know, like, and trust, those that are relational in nature, like Apple, make infinitely more money for selling the same products that Dell sells. Now, Dell sells it for just shockingly less money, but doesn't make half as much cash as Apple does. And certainly not on a per item basis. Why? Because we've attached feeling to it. We've associated the representation of that brand with our identity, how we feel about it, how we feel it within ourselves, to the signals that it sends to our loved ones, and to the greater tribes that we're trying to impress upon that we are of value in this universe amongst the tribes that we're interacting with.
The fastest way an SMB loses revenue? Missed calls. And almost nobody tracks them. So what happens? Customers hang up, calls ring out, people get dumped into voicemail purgatory, and most businesses treat this just like, whatever. But it's actually lost revenue, lost appointments, and lost trust. So tech advisors who surface this instantly elevate the conversation. So here are the questions that reveal the truth right away. Hey, how many calls go unanswered on a normal day? Do you offer queue callbacks? What's your abandonment rate? Do you know your average time to answer? See, when they struggle to answer these questions, the opportunity becomes obvious. If a client doesn't know the metrics, they're bleeding opportunity every single day. And if your client wants a UCaaS platform that actually measures and reduces missed calls, Level 365 is built to close that gap immediately. So you brought up Apple because I shared with you before we hit record. I'm currently finishing up my reread of the Steve Jobs biography from Walter Isaacson. And it's an all-time classic. I cannot recommend enough for folks to go ahead and read that when they get the chance. But one of the things I wanted to talk about price specifically, because when you see a company trying to enter into a specific marketplace as a disruptive force, there is this knee-jerk reaction to almost enter in with a low price, right? That's how you become the disruptor, Ryan. And this was actually brought up. It's funny that we're having this conversation today. I was literally just reading this when they were talking about the iPhone. And the idea that somebody would pay $500, mind you, this is the 2000s, when they're having this conversation, like the mid 2000s. The idea somebody's going to pay $500 for this at this point is the iPhone, the beginning of the iPhone. And one of the folks that Steve Jobs was collaborating with when they're going through and having this conversation was like, we have to drop it. We have to drop it. And Steve was like, adamantly, no, we are presenting this built on value, right? And what we're doing for the in this case, the customer, we're creating an entirely different environment for them to not only, now it was supposed to be a mobile iPod was the idea first that could also do phone calls, right? That was the entire vision, but now it's turning into something so much more. And it turned into really an entire brand of smartphones that everybody has in some way, shape, or form. So I just want to start here with this idea of not using price as a disruptive force. What are some other methods you've seen? And maybe you could use Steve Jobs as the example of the iPhone or other examples you've seen where price wasn't the number one factor for a brand to become a disruptive force in their respective market.
Sure. Well, and in a lot of these things, and even in the Apple with a $500 iPhone back in the day, that was groundbreaking, and it was disruptive on the high side, right? Rory Sutherland, the VP of Ogilvy in UK, once had a problem to solve in South Africa with Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he didn't say to lower the price to sell more chicken. He said to raise the price to sell more chicken. The reason he said to do that wasn't because he was greedy and wanted more money for the chicken. It was because people perceived Kentucky Fried Chicken as a treat. And you don't pay a little amount of money for a treat. You splurge and treat yourself with a little bit more expensive thing. This is the truth about Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's. This is the truth about a lot of different things that we can choose to use and how that price might reflect on them. But if we just separated ourselves from price and talked about disruption, the number one reason why you're going to disrupt a market is because of the story you tell and how you make people feel. It has absolutely nothing to do with the price that you charge or how good your product is. Quite frankly, most people don't want the best product. Most people want something just a little bit less shitty than what they have right now.
Very, very, very true. I'm thinking of some of these brands too that are out there. They were very disruptive and they came out of nowhere, seemingly, right? So we think of coolers, and Igloo was the cooler brand everywhere. And then all of a sudden, this no-name company called Yeti, who was making these really good cups, started making coolers, and now that's like the go-to cooler, right? So like you see Yeti, you see this, I mean, Hydro Flask, right? Or what's the Stanleys, right? Stanley goes from being just kind of this everyman brand where it was more for your average everyday guy, and then it turned into this like highbrow, like rich white woman kind of you are not utensil, but in this case a cup, right? Like it's silly that that's all it took was a change in the approach for the brand. But you're right. It's all about how it made people feel. There's a status of when you have the Stanley, right? There's the status of having the Yeti cooler. When you have the Apple phone, there's this feeling of like, I still get shit on because I have an Android and I don't show up right in the group chats. Brian, am I the green one? I think I'm the green one, right? Like I'm the one who doesn't match the iPhone family. And It's funny because like it's not, there's nothing about that's logical or reason based. It's all feelings, right? Like I have my phone because I like Android. I've liked the operating system, and I like, the new features and functionality and stuff. And I try to fact and figure and logic and reason why I have the phone. But at the end of the day, I go back to, well, I like it. It's a preference, right? And it makes me just feel a certain way. Now I'm becoming more open to Apple. I got a new iPad for Christmas. Merry Christmas, Brian. So like using the iPad, I become much more familiar again with the operating system, and I'm like, oh yeah, forgot Mac is actually, or Apple's very, very clean, and it's very smooth. And I was telling my wife, I was like, maybe I'll actually get an iPhone when I get a new phone, just to see what it's like to have that all-in-one ecosystem from iPhone to Mac to iPad. So I say that it's, again, going back to, yes, I'm trying to justify with facts, figures, logic, and reason, but it is all feels, right? It is. I've used this example on another podcast I host called a CX Without the BS, where we talk about customer experience, and I call it the warm and fuzzy meter, right? Like, yeah, sure, you can do your customer satisfaction scores, which, sure, like those are all. I'm as a KPI, I'm iffy on CSAT scores, but neither here nor there for our conversation. But I like to use my my TM warm and fuzzy meter, which again, not really objective at all in the warm and fuzzies, but it's that thing you feel, right? Like you can't put it into a number, you can't put it into words. It's something that it hits you in a certain way. It's like when you're sitting down, it's Christmas time. Again, I told you I love Christmas, and you're watching those old nostalgic commercials that will pop up every now and then, like the one with the kids he's in the snowman. He's a snowman. He's eating the Campbell's soup and he starts to melt, right? Or then there's the one of the two M&Ms, and like, I don't know. I haven't even met the guy. Oh, he does exist. He do exist, right? Like there's those commercials. There's the Hershey Kisses where they're the jingle bells and they're dinging the bell each one, right? Like there's all these commercials that make you feel good. There's something about them. That's why they keep airing them. And I say all that, like you're so right that the feel part is so important. And I wanted to emphasize this because that goes to mentally. We always think of the transactional physical thing we're buying. But in 2025, Ryan, a lot of the stuff we're buying, it's not a tangible thing. It could be a service, like a software. It could be like, an actual, like, a service that you do. So you're selling a service, like, maybe you're doing something in your community, right? And you're trying to get out there more, not just selling a product, but trying to do something for folks. So like, how do you help get that warm and fuzzies, right? The feeling part of it beyond, because there is no physical thing now they're taking away. You have to make that warm and fuzzy feeling continue after your service is done. So like, what does that look like? And what have you seen be successful?
Well, when you study both the psychology and the biology and the outer neuroscience of it all, to just hyper simplify this well beyond how simple it actually is, but to give a clear path to how to solve this is a couple of things. You've intuitively tapped into a couple of things, Brian. One is that you really have only two things that make people want to spend more money. They will give you more money when they have exclusivity, right? So when there is that cachet of them ranking up amongst themselves, their inner self, their loved ones, and their greater tribes. The people in your text message group shame you because you haven't committed to the status of the blue bubble, right? Which then brings them all to green bubbles, and you end up becoming this pariah. This is very intentionally done by Apple, who is telling the world that you're not poor. And whether that's true or not is inconsequential to what the world is being perceived in how it's told. In the absence of status, in the absence of exclusivity, you only have one thing left, and that's convenience. So convenience satisfies the uncertainty that you're worried about. The things that in service worlds, it's like, how do I remove that uncertainty? How do I remove that discomfort? we really live in a world of duality. It's not all hierarchies and archetypes and all of these things. It's really much more of a this versus that, and it is a spectrum, but it is a clear spectrum of one or the other, the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, the rank up or rank down, right? I want to be seen when I'm buying a productivity tool that I am proficient and smart with my time, right? That I'm wise with how I use my energy and put out my effort, and that energy and effort taps into whether or not I'm below the baseline of happy or above it, and I'm always trying to pursue pleasure and remove pain. Right. And it comes back to all of these very root, basic psychological concepts of duality, of seeking pleasure, removing pain, or eliminating pain in some way, punishment, whatever the case might be. So when we recognize that, we start to recognize, how do I move the needle? And as a seller, whether I'm selling or if I'm going further up top of funnel and turning that into a marketing message, the answer has been studied, but in a completely different field, and it's anthropological field, where what they're studying is how people perceive others in a group. So the social impacts of things. I'm not spitting out the words right tonight, but really what we're thinking about here is first and foremost, is this person warm? Right? In other words, the terms that we would hear in today's vernacular would be empathy. Do we feel their empathy? Do we understand or perceive their empathy? And the empathy always has to come first. If we don't feel their empathy, we're not going to go into the cave with the caveman with the big club, right? Because we'll die in our sleep. So the first thing we have to figure out is this company, is this brand, is this person representing the brand empathetic? And then and only then will we give them permission to show their competence. Now, notice I didn't say confidence, I said competence. And that matters a lot, because you don't have to be competent to be confident, right? You just have to be really, really convincing. So at the end of the day, they want to see competence, which instills confidence, right? And ultimately, those are the first two signals of trust. So as a brand, if we're trying to make a customer feel something about us, we need them to first feel empathy, then our competence, but not competence before our empathy. And that means we have to make them laugh, cry, or angry. Now, not angry at you, but angry at the injustices that you're fighting as a hero fighting the villain. Right? The villain of the industry, the villain of the competition, the villain of the bad thing that happens when you don't have this thing.
Yep. I'm just laughing because, so for folks who, again, are aware of my day job and have been playing along in the home game, they've seen my career and kind of my approach to things. So I just, again, to refresh folks, I work in the go-to-market space where, in this case, I'm basically activating what are called channel managers, or I'm a channel manager. I'm activating folks in the channel who are sub-agents who are basically bringing me and my company opportunities in the unified communication space. And I just recently got my company into what's called the TSD channel, a technology service distributor channel. Now, just to help give context, my company is one of literally hundreds of unified communication vendors that are out there. And in the specific TSD channel that we're in, there's around 90 or so, it's called UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service, UCaaS vendors that are out there. So we are now one of 90, right? And in going basically David versus Goliath, because the reality is my company, we don't have millions and millions of dollars to go toss our name and our logo everywhere, right? So we kind of have to approach things differently. And what I've been doing is much more, really, it's funny. Like, I've been following kind of the approach you're talking about. Like, we lead with really two big differentiators in our industry. Number one, we have 100% US based support, right? So we lead with that as a differentiator. You're going to call and get a live answer in under 10 seconds. And it's going to be a real person who can actually help fix your issue, not a tier one support. So that's huge. But then the other piece is and you were talking about competence, right? Will lead to the confidence. We lead with no contracts. So we are literally month to month as a UCaaS service that is traditionally open to locking customers into 3 to 5 year deals, right? So if you have a terrible experience in the first 6 months, oops, sorry, you're stuck with us for another 2.5 years, if not longer. And if you want to leave, you got to pay all these early termination fees, which is going to be usually the rest of your contract in one big lump sum. So the fact that we are showing our competence by doing well every single month instills confidence in our customers. And it has been such a differentiator when I'm competing against all the other 90 vendors that really what it comes down to is I don't need to be the number one vendor that every single technology advisor brings to the table, but I want to be on that list of 5 or 6, right? I want to be top of mind. So how do I stay top of mind? I be consistent. I really highlight where we differentiate. And I think the other piece too is we as an organization, my day job, are a phenomenal culture. And that really shows when we're differentiating from some of these ginormous Leviathan organizations that are out there that just kind of go along to get along because that's what they've done every single year and it pays all their bills. So I say all that going into the idea of culture, right? My main company right now, my old company, back when I was out in the Philadelphia market, we used to have a slogan, good people bring out the good in people. So when we were going through the hiring process, it was entirely focused on building a culture of good people. So I've seen it myself. Culture is huge, Ryan, but for some organizations, I hear culture just being an afterthought. Yeah, we'll talk about culture when sales improve. Yeah, we'll talk about culture when we stop losing customers. Yeah, we'll talk about culture when ... right? So talk to us about building a strong winning culture and what does that look like in your world?
Well, the crazy thing about what you just said is that the reality of it is they don't realize they have a culture. I promise you, they have a culture. Every company has a culture.
Yeah.
They just have a shitty one. So at the end of the day, do you want to have a great culture, or do you want to have a take over the world culture? Do you want to get just good enough culture, or do you want to have a culture where it's constant churn, constant headache, constant grind, constant fight, constant mediocrity until you sell the business or close its doors because you just can't keep up with all those other big slick companies who are bigger than you? Well, they're bigger than you because you suck. So at the end of the day, you got to do something that's going to matter first and foremost, right? So making a commitment, for example, to a full American-based call center team with rapid response as an operational standard has a consequence to it. That costs more, right? But that cost makes it worth being a part of it, right? That's what makes the value. So yes, will somebody pay more for that? Well, they should, right? Because the alternatives are they can talk to AI and get disappointed there, or some IVR horrific, mess of a phone tree, or they can talk to a real red-blooded American soul who knows and understands what the situation is on the ground, just like you do, living your life every single day. So I'm going to pick my poisons. The confidence that you instill by showing how comfortable you are not putting people onto contracts. These are cultural operational decisions. What I've discovered is that there's really about 12 key things that create friction and resistance in a company. And if we just kind of sat for a moment and philosophized about a brand for a second and just said, hey, imagine your brand has a soul. And the people that interact with the soul of your brand, the expressions of your brand, they come from the policies that you make and the products you choose to sell, the way that you choose to show the pricing, the way that your employees show up for work every day and want to work or not want to work, the quiet quitting or the ambitious, energetic meetings that you have every day, the customers who are naturally drawn to you, and having their souls touch your brand souls. Well, most companies are soulless, right? And then if you sell it off to private equity or some other viper or vampire, you're going to have your soul sucked right out of you and destroy everything that you've ever built. Well, that's a choice for money, and that's certainly, you can sell your soul to the devil like anyone can, and they're the devil in those industries where ultimately a long purchase cycle is being replaced by a short selling mindset and breaking the community and the culture that drove that to its success in the first place. But If you have a private equity company that has a short selling philosophy and they're buying a short selling model, hey, there's a winning operation there. Will both make money? Sure. But more often than not, and I mean 3 out of 4 times more often than not, they're going to fail, and they're going to have the 25% supporting the 100% remaining, or the 75% remaining. Why does this matter? Well, because you can't just say you have a culture and then expect us all of a sudden a culture to appear. The truth is that your brand is your culture, and your culture is your brand. And no matter which way you hope for it to go, what your people choose to do is precisely what your brand is. So fix your people first, serve your people first, and then those people are going to deliver the brand that you intended. That's the advertising that we do after the fact from those people, the customers, and the coworkers that you work with, that drive more interest and impressions and sales and revenue to your business, because you've built a system that is both compelling to the consumer, but equally as compelling to the employees who want to work there, not just be forced to work there, because there's no better place.
Ryan, I've really enjoyed today's conversation, and I actually had a gentleman on the show a while back. We did an episode called Iceberg Selling, where you talk about like the tip of the iceberg and you discover what's below. I feel this is kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of all the different areas that you can really help organizations as they go out and try to better their sales processes and build better cultures. So with that being said, I would be remiss if I did not give you the last word here. So do us a favor, bring us home. What would you like the audience to take away from today's episode? And then also give us some plugs in terms of where folks can go ahead, reach out, learn more, or if they're saying, yeah, my business is kind of struggling, I need some help. Ryan, SOS, where can they go ahead and give you a shout?
Yeah, you can always find me at ryanchute.com or Wizard of Ads. And Wizard of Ads has a couple of websites out there, but they're all fairly easy to find. My socials are usually where most people consume my information, from YouTube to TikTok to all the other places that you'd expect to see a human being nowadays. That's all at wizardryanchute.com, Wizard Ryan Chute. Outside of that, the big thing to take away, I would hope to take away from this is, when you start to look inside your business, and big or small, and just say, hey, what do I stand for and what do I stand against? That's really the beginning of you building out a culture that people are going to want to be a part of. Because the reality is that people don't follow people who aren't going anywhere. So first thing you got to do is pick a North Star and decide what you're going to be.
Amen. I really appreciate that sentiment, because candidly, that is why I think we've had success here at the Brian Nichols Show. We have always made a point to leave the audience educated, enlightened, and informed. We're going to talk about issues when they're difficult issues, and we do so because it's important, right? We're going to talk about strategies. We're going to talk about things that actually move the needle. And I think there is a respect and an understanding that my audience has had where they understand we're not just going to tell them what they want to hear. We're going to have difficult conversations, or we're going to challenge them, right? Like I've told my weight loss story from when I weighed 385 pounds to losing, over 180 pounds over a 2-year period without doing the surgery, just doing it the hard way, because it was important. And like having people reach out to me afterwards saying like, Brian, kind of needed to hear that, because I was looking for every single excuse I could find not to do my health as a priority. And to see that it is something that we really embraced here at the show, like just, elephant in the room to folks. We get around like 200K, views in total per month, which, we're not the biggest show. We're not Joe Rogan out there, but hey, we're getting a really steady base of folks who are listening to the Brian Nichols Show. We're on average reaching hundreds of thousands of people, literally millions of people every single year. And that's important. That matters. And I think you're right. It really goes back to just having a North Star. So thank you, Ryan, for sharing your insights today. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give you, Ryan, the final word for today. Any last thoughts for the audience before we go ahead and say goodbye?
Listen, 2026 is going to be a tough year, but it's going to be a great year. Lean in, work hard. You're going to have a great year. For those people paying attention and showing people how much they're worth their trust, they're going to be the ones who are going to come out the front runners no matter what.
Hear, hear. Amen. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation. With that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Ryan Chute.